Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, 26th May 2023, we're going to be talking about upside down streamers. It'll also be our last scheduled presentation for the spring 23 season. The weekly tip, well, that's going to be your job. We'll be talking about that in a moment.
However, we will be going on occasionally in the summer when we need a Zoom fix, huh?
Oh yeah, we'll continue to do Zoom throughout the summer with programs like the Beatties and Just Another Day at the Office, and whoa, we got a quick tip going, and stuff like that. But for right now, we're the next thing that we're going to do. Oh, I forgot to say, we're the Beatties from Boise, Idaho, in case you didn't know it already. But anyway, one of the next things that we're going to do after we're through with this series of presentations is we're going to work on our fly boxes as part of this Beatties at Work program, the fly boxes that we're going to take to the rendezvous in Branson, Missouri. So that'll be fun, and if you all want to follow along, you surely can.
Any requests for those of you who are going to be in Branson, what you'd like to see in our fly boxes?
You could request, but you're going to probably get the same thing anyway.
I'll listen maybe.
Okay.
But no Atlantic salmon flies.
No,
we can do those.
too much work. Anyway, folks, tonight we're doing a couple of upside down streamers. And when I was I don't use the upside down dry flies a lot, and I talked about that last week. But I do use the upside down streamers almost exclusively, including some ones other than the ones we're going to talk about tonight. But tonight, I'm just going to quickly show you the two we're going to talk about on the recipes, and we'll go back to the recipes in detail. But the first one is going to be an upside down zonker. And that is a number one fly in my personal fly box. It probably, I'd have to say it would be in my top 6 patterns. And the upside down keel streamer is one with a problem that I would hope that all of you can help me solve. But if you have questions, unmute yourself and ask. This is a very informal type of presentation. And I guess we'll take a quick look at a stack of junk. We call it the materials area, which nothing has changed. It's always all kinds of stuff. Anyway, why is hairspray here? Well, that's because one of the items that I'm going to use tonight is mylar tubing, and after you pull the core out of it, it'll come apart like crazy. But if you spray it down with hairspray, it stays together pretty good, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But we've got hair, feathers, 2 sizes of lead wire, chenille, more chenille. I mean, we've just got stuff all over, and I've sprayed everything down with static guard, just to make sure that we don't have too much static electricity going around here. But let's go to recipe number 1 there, Gretch. Okay, the zonker. We are going to use a 3 or 4x long streamer hook. The thread is black or color of choice. Hey, one of the things I want you to notice, we don't say whether you need to use uni-thread or UTC or whatever the heck kind of thread. If you don't know it, we only use Danville, that's it. So if you have black and then you put your choice of thread in there, that's what you need. The weight will be non-lead loop. The tail is a rabbit strip. The body is mylar tubing. The wing is a rabbit strip. And the hackle is black. And notice that I didn't say black feather, I didn't say black fur, whatever, because I tie it always. It's anyway.
Al, what weight of thread will you be tying this with?
I'll narrate to that as we go along. I'll be using both 3/0 and 6/0, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish.
And what size of hook are you going to tie on?
I'm tying on tonight. Let's see, what am I tying on? I'm tying on size 8, but then I rebuild one of the hooks. I rebuild it into something else, and that's what we're going to talk about. But for now, we're on the zonker, and let's take a look at, well, let me change glasses first. Get my regular tying glasses out. Then we'll go to the vise and I'll get my focus fly
You
out
know,
of
your
here.
focus slide's getting pretty ragged there.
But look at all those, that real fine detail right here in the back, that if I want to get a really good job of focusing, when I can see all those little fibers that are all that frayed stuff, that tells me that it's in focus. Anyway, the first fly tonight is a zonker. And I want you to notice that I've got a hair clip right there. And why is that? Because let me show you what I invariably do. And I know you guys would never do it, but oh, that's a pretty looking fly. And I'll stroke those fibers. And I want you to see what's hidden in there. Guarantee you, if you stroke those fibers, well, you're going to get bit. So I got this here so I don't forget. Anyway, that's the guy we're tying tonight. Now, let me just set that aside. And before we go any further, we're going to talk a little bit about weighting. We kind of chuckled about it last week a bit, and I'll just do a quick review. What we're not going to do, now here is a hook and a piece of lead. They're not together. I'm going to throw that lead away right now. An unweighted hook is going to sink in the water column point down, unless there is enough materials positioned around the hook to cause it to do something different. Set that down. Here's a hook with lead wrapped around the shank. When the amount of lead wrapped around the shank is enough extra weight to counterbalance or to correct for the leverage that there is in the bend of the hook and the extra weight down here on the end, it'll flip over and it'll be in the water column upside down, unless materials come along to affect it in some way. We'll talk about that a little bit later this evening. Here's the one that you probably couldn't even figure out what I was talking about last week. But this one is going to flip over because all of the weight and leverage and weight together, flip it over. And we're going to actually be bending our wire back like this to help shape a body and provide weight that will flip it over. Let me just throw that down. One of the things that I will not be doing tonight, but I think you can find it anywhere on YouTube, is I won't be using any dumbbell eyes. Not that I don't use them on a lot of my upside down flies. It's just don't have time to do it all tonight. So we'll get into that. But for right now, let's start out by setting a hook, the hook in place. And I want you to notice, first off, I'm going to pinch the barb in case I accidentally hook myself. It'll be a lot easier to release me. It's a catch and release Al kind of a deal. Now, and I found this afternoon that if I bury it like that, it doesn't affect the point any because it's actually pinched onto this part of the hook, and the point is okay inside of there. It's not going to affect that, and but it keeps me from getting hooked on it. Okay, now I'm going to grab, I got orange here, so I'll just grab single strand floss orange. And it doesn't really make any difference what it is. I just happen to grab that. And let me start, let's break the hook shank up into thirds. And I'm going to start 1/3 back on the hook shank, wrapping over this area, 1/3 back. I'll just lay my thread, I'll call it, even though it's single strand floss, right there, do a jam knot, wrap over it, wrap almost to the end of the shank. Now, this is an important feature on this particular fly. Remember, it's an upside down zonker. And I'm going to stop right there. I am about 1 eye width, 1.5 eye widths away from the end of the shank. That's important. We'll narrate to that in a little bit. Now let's wrap back forward. All right, and I'm going to stop just a little bit shy of the starting point. And I'm going to move over to the materials area and get some lead wire. Now, as you can see, this is some pretty substantial lead wire as compared to this other spool, which is 15 thousandths. This is one heck of a lot heavier. And this is what I'm going to be using for this fly, but I sure won't be cutting it with my scissors. I'll be using some side cutting pliers. So let me get over here at the vise, and I'll reach over here on my second table and get my side cutters out and cut off a chunk. And it's going to be a lot more than what I really need, but that's all right. I'll put that back over there.
Al, you got any idea what gauge that wire is that you're using?
Big. In other words, I don't have a clue. It is not wire, actually, John. It's solder.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. I know what you got now.
Okay, good. Okay, now I am going to lay this in place on top of the hook, and I don't want it to reach clear back to the end of the thread, just a little bit shy of that. So I am going to make a couple of turns really tight. I mean, this is single strand floss, and I am really bailing into it. And then I take a loop around the lead, another loop around it. I'm really cinching that in on top there. And now I'm just going to bind it all the way to the back of the hook. But what I'm wanting to make sure that I do is that I get that positioned directly on top of the hook, which is the bottom of the fly, by the way. I kind of screwed up. It slipped back a little bit. I'll make it work, but I really wanted to have a little bit of more space between the end of my thread, but I'll live with that rather than
Maybe
dig
when
it up.
you brought the thread underneath and around, you
I
probably pulled on it.
pushed it right there. Anyway. Okay, no. I forgot. I got to leave this at the back, because the next thing we're going to do now is shape the underbody. And now remember, that'll still work out. I'll be okay. Now I'm going to bend this over just like that. And that's a little bit thick, so I'll just push down a little bit just to, there, better. Now I have to get my side cutting pliers again. Because what I want to do is cut this off at a very severe angle so it'll continue the taper that I'm trying to build. You'll see what I mean here in just a moment. Well, I sure screwed that up. Well, you know what, folks? Now I do have to take it off and put it on again. But that's all right. It's a good thing this is the last night. In fact, I got another hook. Let's just get rid of that. Get another hook out here. And now I don't need to explain to you about all the dimensions and all that kind of stuff. I can just start over. 1/3 back on the shank. Okay, now I'm going to
Is there
stop
any
about.
reason why you have to start attaching that wire at the front of the hook? You couldn't do it back behind to ensure that you don't screw it up?
Oh, no, you'll see why here in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, now I left myself some space here at the back. Remember that. Coming back forward. All right, now I'm going to get my pliers and cut off. I don't need to go over to the materials area. I'll just reach over there and grab a chunk of that wire. Now I'm going to make sure this time that it doesn't go back too far.
I slipped. You better check it. No, it's okay.
It's good. I don't feel right. I don't have my scissors in my hand. I got to pick my scissors up so I can wrap thread. I know that sounds crazy to you guys, but I can tell you the scissors that we use, the whisk scissors, they're various colors, and over the years that we've used, we have them in our hands so darn much that sometimes we'll be up watching television after we've been tying flies for the day. Danged if the scissors aren't still in our hands. Or go up to cook dinner, and here we are peeling potatoes, and you got a pair of scissors in your hands. Wow. Okay. Pin that down. Now let me get my pliers again, and this time I'll try to cut it in the right place.
I think you can see if you look up at the screen. You can see
Yeah, let
better
me
where
back
you
up
are.
just a
Yeah, there you
little.
are. That's better.
Yeah, this there. That's what I wanted right there.
It's hard to see it with the camera in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There, now that blends right into that bend that I want. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to get is my hairspray covered piece of mylar tubing with the core taken out. I've already taken that core out. It's kind of a pain in the neck to take out. And I use a pair of these needle nose tweezers, the kind that stay shut all the time and you have to force them apart to open them up. And they work pretty well for pulling that core out. So anyway, let me just slip this up and over and push it all the way to the back. And that's a little bit too long. I think I'll just go ahead and trim it off a little bit. I took just a wild guess. Okay, that's going to work out pretty good. Now I'll get my bodkin out here, and I want to fray this a little bit at the back. And the best place to fray it is right down here at the top of the fly. Okay, I want you to notice up here that when I pull back as much as I can, that there's a little bit of bare hook showing up there. I need just a tiny bit more showing so that I get a nice, neat head when I finish off the fly. If I don't have that bare hook showing up there, what ends up happening is a trimmed mylar tubing is there we go. That's just what I need right there. See how much is showing right there? 2 eye widths, maybe, just guessing, but 2 eye widths. Now I'm just going to temporarily pull this floss back out of my way. And I'm going to reach over and get some 3/0 black thread. And I'm going to want to capture this. Okay. I want you to notice that I'm taking a loop around my finger so I can really pull on that. There we go. That's what I wanted to have happen. Now, whip finish the black. It's going to go back on in a bit, but for right now, I just need the thread out of my way so I can trim off these ends here. And if you try to trim them all at once, you're going to end up with a big, gobby, really bad looking head. What you want to do is trim these ends a few at a time. And I know this is kind of futzy work, but that's all right. And now we want to come here at the back and dress all these fibers back the best we can. Because it's really important that I get this split. There we go. Get those fibers on one side of the hook or the other. There they go. Now, what I'm going to do is just yeah, I've got those so they're not crisscrossing right here. I don't want them to crisscross over right there on the bottom of the hook. So, and in fact, that's the way the fly is going to be shaped, and that's the body of the fish. for the fly that we're going to do. And I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this off for right now.
It gives you a nice red spot there at the back.
Yeah, it gives you a nice hot spot. And on a regular zonker, you'd also be tying the wing down there. But the reason I want to make sure that there's no fibers here, you'll see in a minute. All right, now it's up to you how long this tail is. I don't particularly like a long tail on my zonkers, so mine's going to be short. But if you want a long one, that is perfectly all right. It's all a matter of personal preference. But now we have the body of our fly, and it doesn't look too bad, except for a little bit of a messed up spot right here. I don't know if I can straighten it out with my thumbnail. Almost, not quite. That's all right. We'll cover it up with the wing. Now what I'm going to do is get my piece of rabbit strip. And I want you to notice this rabbit strip has the hair straight in line with the hide. That's called a zonker strip or a trout zonker strip, depending on which manufacturer has made it. There's also crosscut zonker, and that's a totally different thing. And on the crosscut zonker, instead of going straight back like this along with the hide, all the hair goes to one side or the other because it's been cut across the grain. And that's hair that you want to use for wrapping around a hook, like it was hackle or something. This is for wings. I got one little wild one here I want to get rid of. I better take care of those before I try to put the wing on.
So Al, would you ever consider using a burner tool, whatever they call those things? So
I got one right here, but the burner tool does not do a real good job on this Mylar. This is
I wondered
metal.
about that. Okay.
And but now there's some other stuff it works real good on. It looks like Mylar, but it's kind of this pretty pearlescence crap. I forget what it's called. One of you can probably knows better than I do. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to temporarily get rid of that guy right there. I'm going to put the hook in the vise by the eye. And that's strictly because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. Let's see if I pull it. There we go, right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to impale this leather over the hook. And the reason I wanted to leave space here is so that that will bind down into the shank area, not the bend area. And I don't have to ever tie it down at the back of the hook again, because it will be anchored in place by my positioning on the straight part of the shank. So let me just set that down. Let me see if you can see what I'm doing here. Well, let me try it this way. Maybe that works better. You know, it's pretty black, isn't it? It's not gonna. I'm just going to. Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm impaling it about this close to the end. And in other words, it's about less than the gap of the hook from the end of the leather. Okay, there we go. Now I'll put the hook back in the vise the regular way. All right, now that will pull right in line there. Good. Get that out of my way for a moment. And so I don't get it all tangled up while I'm doing some other functions here. I'm going to take this hair clip off And I'll set that one over and I'll try to make sure that I never touch it again until I already stuck myself on the hook right there. Dressing all that back, getting it out of the way. All right, now I'm going to go to 6/0 black thread, just because I don't want it to build up too fast and I want a nice looking head when I get done here. All right, now we're going to put on our hackle. And I'm using a piece of soft hackle chickaboo. I'm using the soft hackle part of it. And this has got a lot of black in it, so I'm using it up. I couldn't find my black cape, so we're going to have one with a brown with a lot of black in it. And I'm going to introduce you a little tool that I got from my friend Jan Abben in the Netherlands. He's one of the principals of the Fly Tying Friday Europe, the European version. And it's for folding hackle. And let's see if I can get that. This tool is well, you'll have to send to Europe to get it, but it's for folding hackle, and it's called Future Fly. So if you do a Google search on Future Fly, Jan's, I think it's his son or son-in-law, I can't remember which, anyway, has a fly shop in Germany, manufactures and sells these, and this is for folding hackle. Actually works pretty darn good. You can fold it as much or as little as you want. I think that's enough. I'll put that away.
I didn't know you had that.
Oh,
I
haven't
really
been
like
showing you everything.
that.
I mean, if you knew I had that, I wouldn't have it anymore.
That is cool.
Isn't that
Yeah,
cool?
remember now that's called, and you probably want to go back to this in the recording on the live stream or on Facebook. Future Fly. You do a Google search for that, and anyway, you'll end up with that fly shop in Germany, and that's where they ship it from. I think it runs about $25-30, but I worked out a different deal to get it from Jan. But anyway, kind of a cool little device. And we'll just put our feather in there that we're going to wrap for hackle. Now, we're used to stroking the fibers back, and I still do that. Not everybody does, but I still do. And I'm going to do it there, but I'm going to do it very carefully because I got a hook point in a place that I'm not used to having it, because I'm really used to having my, whoops, that all slipped on me right there. We go. I'm so touchy of that doggone hook point that I'm not getting my hackle placed right. Ouch, just got me there. And you're all sitting out there saying, oh, when is the guy going to stab himself? You know, it's the television shows with the most blood is the one with the best audience. Well, I'm going to satisfy that urge for you all here. I'm doglegging the hackle. In other words, I bound it down with 2 turns of thread, and now I'm wrapping back over the stem to push that hackle back. So it's anchored from 2 directions. It's not going to come loose on us. All right. And now this is the top of the fly. I don't really need the hackle there because the wing's going to be there. So I'm just going to take my thumbnail and kind of spread that a little bit so that that wrapped hackle is more to the sides than it is on top. Okay, let's pull our wing around. Now I got a brush here to straighten out my hair. If I try to do it with my fingers, you know what's going to happen. There we go, looking pretty good. Now what I want to do, and I'm going to show you a trick for anchoring your zonker wings, because so many people make the mistake of trying to just tie down the leather on the zonker wing, and that's fine, that works, but there's a better way, and it'll also give you a great opportunity, an opportunity to have a better looking head. So you see how I'm kind of splitting my hair fibers until I find just where I want to make the cut. That's about right there. So I'm going to cut it off right there. Boy, you say there's no room there to do anything. Well, that's because we're going to use another dog leg trick. See, I'm grabbing just the fur, not the leather. The leather is right here, and it's only going to get 2 or 3 turns of thread around it. Get that fur back up on top, because I am using the fur to make a dog leg. There we go. Binding down the leather and the fur that I pulled forward, which is mostly what I bound down just now is fur. I'll pull the fur back. All right, there we go. Now it's time to put on a whip finish.
Good time to break your thread.
It's a great time to break my thread. I bumped it with my scissor point just a minute ago, and I said, oh crap, here we go, right at the very end. But I got lucky. And now let's get out a hackle pliers to hold that fly, so you get a chance to see just what we have here. And we'll just kind of dress him up a little bit. And there you've got it with my hackle pliers out of there. I'll try not to hook myself. And what I have is a cousin to this one, almost identical, that I have in the tank. Swims really nice. It swims with the hook point up because of the way the lead is put in there. And then there's quite a bit of lead in there too. I'll lay that down. Let me plug the tank in so that the current is flowing. Okay, and now I'm just going to swing the camera up to the tank so that we can see the flowing water and the fly with the 5 mile bar pool swimming in the background. And there we are. Now I tied the zonker in the tank one size larger so it would show up better on camera. That's the only difference between the one we tied just now and that one.
Why does the gold body not show up on that bigger one?
Probably because I got the camera coming from a top angle.
Oh, okay.
And it's really difficult to get it down to a lower angle. I can see it here.
Okay, that's all. I just thought maybe, well, that fly might be slightly different. The other question, Al, I was surprised you didn't use the technique that somebody pointed out last time and put a little piece of tubing like a larva lace or something over the hook so you don't jab yourself even as you're tying. You know,
I tried that and didn't like it. I'd rather
Okay.
poke myself than to have to fiddle around with that piece of tubing. And I
okay,
use tubing, I use fly line, and all that stuff just slows me down more. And like that whip finish I had to do there at the back, that is next to impossible with that piece of tubing sticking out there for me. Now, for you all, you
Okay.
probably can do it just fine, but I can't. But any questions there? Come on, there's got to be some questions.
I noticed you used gold for the body color. Is that better than silver?
There's silver, pearl, they're all good. And the reason I use that is when I went to the pegboard, on my pegboard display, the top one was gold.
Okay.
So I'd be
Paul wanted to know, use a hairdryer to finish the fly.
a hairdryer to finish the fly. I never,
So I'm not
I
sure what
don't
he's
know, but
accomplishing.
I don't know. Let's put the hairdryer on it, Paul. We don't know. Let's go back to the vise there. And I'll put that guy in there. I don't know what that's gonna do for us, but it might take those, it might take the doggone, come here, you, gotta get the cord out of the way. I have, what you guys can't see is because of all this stuff that I'm working with tonight, I have another table over here besides the one that I normally have. Now anyway, we're gonna start the dryer.
Al,
Yeah.
did you mentioned that you use solder? Now, I know for electrical work, there's rosin core solder, and then for metal work, there's acid core solder, and then occasionally you can find just solid solder.
Let me
I
see,
know you
I think
shouldn't-
I think it's solid, but let me see. This is solid.
Okay, because if you, I know for anything around other metals, you never want to use acid core.
Right, yeah, this is for use around other metals. It's a byproduct of the phone industry. Back in the days when the phone industry did all of their connections via solder, in other words, a long time ago, when they went to all wire wrap and got rid of the solder, we took thousands of reels of that stuff to the dump. And I
Yeah.
saved it. This is some from, I don't know, I had it before I went in the army. And so it's 50 years, more 55 years. Anyway, let's run the hair dryer. Well, Paul, I don't know if it's any better or not. There it is. Huh. Anyway,
Alan wanted to know, what fish eat this fly?
what I've used it for, I really like to fish this in the Snake River south of Boise. And in that area of the river, I call it potpourri fishing. And what does that mean? Well, it's just a little bit of everything under the sun. And seriously, there's a lot of smallmouth bass in there. And compared to your part of the world, Alan, where you measure fish in pounds, for us, we measure even our smallmouth bass, we measure them in inches, and they seldom go over about 20, 21 inches maybe, and 3 pounds, 4 pounds. Cold winters here don't make for great growth. Okay, there's a lot of perch, crappie in the Snake River, smallmouth, trout, mostly brown trout, and a lot of catfish and stuff like that, and the normal suckers and whitefish and all of that, and you catch every one of them. But what I really am after is a smallmouth or trout.
Mm-hmm.
And in other places, the way it fishes, there's some creeks north of Boise, about 100 miles. There's one that we like to go to that it's not real deep, but you can get down there and just work it along the bottom, up and over the rocks, because it won't hang up on the rocks. It's upside
Oh,
down.
a fairly small size.
The creek is probably 25 feet across in the widest areas. It's very small. But anyway, and it fishes really good there. However, this a size 8 that I did tonight, and I normally tie that in size 12, and I also tie it in size 12 in the next one we're going to tie. But we'll move on to that here in a minute after we finish with the.
Amy wanted to know what feather we use for the hackle. She missed that.
Okay, that is a soft hackle with chickaboo feather, which is. Oh, I hung it back up. Yeah, Amy, it's a Whiting's Farm soft hackle with chickaboo. And where it comes from on the bird is this area is down in the crotch between the legs, and this is the chest. So the breast feathers, and this is the chickaboo part, which comes from the crotch area of the bird. And that's just one of my favorite feathers. I know, having worked for Whiting Farms and access to every kind of dry fly feather under the sun, you would think that I'd fall in love with the dry fly. I don't know. Must be something wrong with me.
Russ wanted to know if any of the body color makes any difference in your success.
I don't think it makes one iota of difference.
Okay. And then Alan says with red hackle, I think it would work well for juvenile tarpon. Ooh, that
Oh.
would be fun, wouldn't it?
Oh, do you fish any, Alan, do you fish any upside down flies for tarpon?
All the time.
I was going to say anything
Yeah.
with a dumbbell eye, just a dumbbell eye flips them all over, doesn't it?
It does, and we sometimes will use a bend back if we're in weeded areas for the reds and the sea trout. But for the tarpon, generally it's a bait fish pattern. But you could, if I were going to try to get under a foot or two of water off the surface, I think that pattern would work real well.
Oh,
And
try it and let us know.
Yeah.
I will. I'll give it a go this summer.
Where you could not, this couldn't have worked better, and this was not a setup, but you talked about bend back flies and all that. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is keel hook streamers. And the bend back is what you're talking about. Well, let's get to it right now. I want to show you. This is the kind of bend back hook probably that Alan's using. It's big enough. Well, here's my hand. It's bigger than my hand. I mean, I'm being a wise guy, but that's probably what 1020, something like that. I can find those all day long, these keel type hooks of this size. You think I can find one in a size 12 to save my life? Nope, not a
Does
chance.
that have a, let me see that.
Careful.
It has a barb here too.
Yeah, it does. It's actually a worm hook
Oh,
for
okay.
bass, but it works really good for keel. If you're tying keel hook type flies for bass, and you need those larger hooks, that happens to be just one of the ones that I didn't get used up. Most of the time I'm using about a size 2, and that's the smallest that I can find them. It used to be you could get keel hooks down into the smaller sizes, and I haven't found them of late, so I have to manufacture my own. And that's what we're going to do next, is manufacture a keel hook, not in a size 2.0, but well, I'll be doing a size 8 tonight. But what I really like to fish them is in sizes 10s and 12s for trout. And that's what we'll be doing next. We may as well take a look at the next fly that we're going to be tying. And that's this guy right here. And that is a keel hook streamer, and it's a bucktail streamer. All it is, and it could be anything. I can tell you right now, all you need to do is follow this general design and put whatever you want on the hook. You know, this is one I just had because this is what was laying out here in the tying table. It could be white, could be black, could be whatever you want. But there's where we're going tonight, and we're going to start with the hook. Now, remember, my goal is to end up with a hook like this. Well, I started out, I said, well, could I bend it? Bad thought, folks, bad thought. Doesn't work out very good. This is what I'm starting out with. Starting out with just a size 8, 2X long dry fly hook. That's what's going to be my keel hook. Well, when I tried bending this all around, all it did is break. And probably that's what it should do because it's a tempered hook. But here's what I've done to make a keel hook out of it. Now let me grab this. Here is 2 pieces of my contraption, if you will. There's the hook. And here is some wire called game changer wire, or all it is wire leader. And what I'm going to do is I've built that, and I'll show you how to do that. And then you insert that into the hook and you tie it in place to end up with a keel hook. And what I want is that eye sitting in about the middle of the gap of the hook. That's what I found works best for me. And I've been fishing this for a while. But what I really want from all of you and all the talent that we have on here tonight, somebody out there probably has a source of where in the heck to find small keel hooks. Don't holler it out. Take a look at the top of the screen, right-hand side, my email address. Please send me emails if you've got a source. And let me set that aside. What our goal is going to be is what we've got right here. This is a keel hook that I made with just exactly what we talked about, except that I've tied it onto the hook, I've wrapped in lead, and it's ready to be tied on. Well, the first thing I want to do is I think you can figure out how to set a hook in the vise, and what I'm going to show you how to do is use the game changer wire, or the wire leader, is that what it actually is, to manufacture that, and then we'll go ahead and tie the fly. Now, I would suspect that Alan Curie recognizes hardwire stainless steel leader material. It's 80-pound test, 18 thousandths diameter, and it's coffee colored. And that's the stuff that I've got right there. And I'm going to use this tool to shape it. And that tool is a thing called a looper. And we'll show you. And that's what a lot of people are using to make game changer snaps, loops, swivels, whatever the heck you want to call them, for game changer flies. Anyhow, I am going to start by cutting just a short section of that 18 thousandths wire. And when I say short section, it's a chunk about 3 fingers long. There it is, about 3 fingers long. All right. Now I'm going to show you how to shape it, and then we'll just go ahead and tie the fly. But I want you to notice in my tool here, right there, that part right there, if you look real careful, this one and this one right here go together and they'll cut the wire. And that's what they're supposed to do. So we have to actually make this tool do something different than what it's supposed to. And so I'm going to stick my wire through there, and I'm going to start to bend. And right there, it's getting ready to cut the wire. So what I'm going to do is grab the left-hand side and push it clear over like that, and then back off. So what that does is it gives me that kind of a configuration, which allows me to slip it into here,
Lower.
slip it in here, and then pinch it together. And now hold it there, grab the long one, and bring it clear down. And then grab the other one and push it clear up so that they're more or less together. And what you end up with is a deal like that. You stick this into your vise, wrap thread around it, to make the little device that you saw before. And you adjust the length of this piece of wire and the length of the bend based on the size of the hook that you're doing. And you'll have to fiddle around until you get it to where the eye lands in about the center of the gap of the hook. But there you are. I'll set that down. And as you'll recall, this is what it's like after you wrap thread on it and you bend it a couple of times. And if we want to do a whole presentation sometime on making hooks like this, we can. But for right now, what I'm going to do is use one that's already made in the interest of time. All right. And now we're ready to tie our fly. 6/0 thread. Just get it wrapped on there. And over at the materials, I am going to grab a piece of my bucktail. And I'll just get a piece off the side here. I don't need much. I want to keep it pretty sparse. Whenever I tie with bucktail, I try to keep it quite sparse. Back over at the vise, I'm going to look through this bundle, and I always find a few broken ends. Now I'll take the really longest ones, pull them out, and stack the others on top.
Yeah, you've mentioned broken ends a couple of times, and I'm confused as to what you mean by that.
They're gone. But let me manufacture one so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, here's a nice end right there. Can you see that? This one right here. There. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a broken end.
Okay.
Actually, it's a broken tip.
A broken tip, yeah.
Okay.
No.
I got you. I'm with you.
Now what I'm going to do is put this in my stacker. And just to let everybody know, it's been a while since I talked about my stackers, but I got lots of these. I love them. I won't sell them. They're not for sale. Don't send an email saying you want to buy one. You can't. You'll have to make your own. It's made out of chapstick, shotgun shell, copper nipple.
What gauge? Shotgun shell.
Each one, 12 gauge.
Okay.
And we're just going to tie on a tail. And this fly can have a tail or not have a tail. That's kind of up to you guys. But I want the tail to stick back probably no more than, a gap and a half, maybe. Trim off the waist and just tie it in place. All right, that's good enough. Put that down. Now I'm going to reach over to the materials area, and I know I've got some chenille over here. There's feathers. Okay, there we go. We're going to use this sparkly chenille. Why? Because it's one of the first things I went looking in the bin for the white, and the first thing that caught my eye was the sparkly stuff in the white bin, and I said, well, I'll try that. And that's why, because all we're doing on this fly, do not think you have to imitate every color that I show you and everything. All we're doing is showing you a design. And from there, you put your own colors to it. Now I want to show you that I'm going to wrap my chenille. And I started doing something that I picked up from Dutch Bachman here a while back. And that is using the weight of the bobbin to keep the peacock curl sitting nicely in place. You know, it works pretty good on chenille too. And now I'm going to reach over and get some of that red chenille because I want to put in the gills. And I'm just going to use a little bit of red chenille for the gills. It could be yarn, could be dubbing, could be whatever you want. But the gills, I don't know. I can't tell you whether it's my imagination or what, but I think the gills make a difference on a streamer.
Is that velour?
It's velour, yeah. It's just some Brazilian velour because that's the first thing I found this afternoon when I was looking for it. All right. And now you've got a choice. You can tie on the wing first and wrap the hackle last, or you can put it on the hackle first and put the wing last. I'm going to do the wing last. But, does somebody want to see it with the hackle last? I don't care. The one that I showed you a few minutes ago, that's what it's like when the wing goes last and the hackle is first.
I'm just gonna break in here because I just noticed this on the chat.
Oh,
Radar 3 says that jewelry making hobbyists would make the same wire loop using tapered round nose pliers. These pliers come in several different sizes, so search on Amazon.
I've got a pair of those. And I've got to tell you the truth, I make a better loop with the whatever you call that thing, the looper tool, than with the rounded ones. And maybe it's just I don't have the skills, but that's
Might have been the size of wire you were
that could
using
be too.
too.
I don't know.
Because I think with jewelry wire, it's pretty easy to.
Now you've already seen how I folded the hackle. Does anybody want to see that tool again, or can I just do it off camera and everybody will be happy? Speak up if you want to see it again.
Off camera.
Yeah, off camera is
Off
good.
camera is good with me too. Thank you.
So I do have a question now. Why don't you use Waddington shanks and just bend them?
I've bent shanks and I break a few of them.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
thought they were pretty soft. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, Waddington, I can't say that I've used Waddington. I don't know anything about the Waddington shank.
The other option I thought of is maybe you could just use a second hook, like a circle hook, and just tie that in.
All good things, all things that I haven't tried the circle hook. I've tried a number of things, and what I've come up with, it works the best for me. Maybe it's because I've done a few game changers and a few LaFontaine wiggle patterns that uses a clip almost like the game changer clip, the LaFontaine the wiggle sculpin and some of those. I can't think right now what they are, but anyway.
Isn't there wiggle crayfish?
Yeah, there's the wiggle crayfish, the wiggle sculpin. Anyway, and all they are is just the head of the fly is a wiggle. And again, we're going to dog leg our hackle, just like we did before. That should be pretty good. Yep, it is. And now this is the top of the fly right here. So I'll just kind of separate the hackle so that it's kind of divided. Just use my thumbnail to do it. And I'll go over here to the materials and get another bundle of that bucktail. And let's see if I can find some broken tips in here. I was hoping to find one for John, and wouldn't you know it, this is the first bundle off that doggone tail that I've taken off of it that didn't have broken tips in it. It's just sometimes John and don't just pay, you know. I want you to notice that compared to what many of you may consider a good bucktail wing, mine are quite sparse. And well, I just think you get better results with a sparser wing. I think it was last night, it was Dutch, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the importance of sparseness in your patterns, and I couldn't agree more. All right, now we're going to tie this in so it's the same length as the tail. Batteries are pretty well dead on that. It'll just have to be this way, I guess. All right, and now we're going to put on a whip finish.
Yeah.
All right, now that finishes that fly. And I think we probably ought to take it for a swim in the tank. I don't know what it's going to swim like, but we'll find out. I'm going to get a piece of 5-pound monofilament. I'm off camera. I'm reaching over here to a spool of monofilament, and I'll just get a section of that about a foot long or whatever. And I never use a clinch knot when I'm fishing, but I always use it here because I can use the bobbin or the vise to make it, and it's a lot faster than fiddling around with a Duncan loop, which is what I usually use to tie flies on.
I'm sorry, Al, what'd you say you use to tie flies on with? What knot?
A Duncan loop or uni knot, whichever you want to call it,
Okay,
depending on how you cinch it down or don't cinch it down. But that's a clinch knot, and that's good enough for the tank.
Hey, in that soldering thing, probably one of the best solders without any interference of metals at all it's called silver solder. It's what we used to use in the HVAC business because any kind of paste would contaminate the refrigerant. So they have it's called silver solder, and you can get it in different sizes.
You know, I think my dad had some of that.
It's a little expensive. It's a little expensive, but it also bends very, very nicely. And then another wire. I have stainless steel dental wire that I picked up when I used to work for an orthodontist. But those pliers that you're talking about, you have to have really, really good ones. And any tempered type of wire like stainless or a thing like that, it's a little hard to bend them unless you have the real ones, the real dental ones, and then they will hold it.
There we go. What we've got here is, this is a cap to the chapstick, and there's the other end of the chapstick with the twisting end pulled out and thrown away. Okay, those fit in there. And one of the things you need to do is there's a ridge that holds the cap on, and you want to take a fingernail file or something like that and polish that ridge off so this slides in and out real easy. Now, I'll just set that down for a minute. Now, to make that plastic cap fit inside the 1/2-inch copper nipple, I needed just a little bit of tape. So I put some masking tape on it and then glued it in there. And then I glued the double cap, if you will, plastic copper nipple inside of a sawed-off shotgun shell base. And as you can see, that's a low base shotgun shell that we use for trap shooting.
Okay. And so you're just like a standard stacker, you're putting the tips facing down toward the shotgun shell.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alan says that our orthodontists or dentists lab techs have some ideal pliers.
We'll have to find out. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, as I remember reading your profile here a few weeks ago, you were a dentist in the Army, is that right?
That's
Alan?
right, Al. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get you a pair of those pliers if you're interested.
Oh,
But
I'm terribly interested in some new toy.
Isn't that what your brother did in the Army too?
Yeah, he wasn't a dentist. He was a dental hygienist or whatever they call him in the Army anyway.
Yeah.
I guess we might as well show the
Hank.
tank. And there it is swimming away, gills and all bouncing around in the current. That's a pretty good current.
that hook is kind of rotating back
It
and
does.
forth, but primarily up.
I was running an experiment of just wrapping around the hook. I think I would rather have the looped solder like we did on the other body and Mylar tubing, because it'll make that hook point stay up more. That's bouncing around a bit.
So use the Mylar tubing instead of the
Yeah, the body that I did on the first line.
Chanel.
Yeah,
That looks good.
yeah. I like the way that gill shows through that hackle too. Anyway, enough of watching something swimming in the tank. Anything else going on? Any other questions? Radar says another wire can be made by tapping 2 or 3 brads of finishing nails into a block of wood and use this idea to bend the wire. You know, I saw something like that on YouTube. That sounds like a good idea. Maybe between the needle nose and that would work out really well. You should be able to, with this tool that I have, it's difficult to make really small or really, really big loops. And just different size finishing nails would give you an option of doing that. That's a good idea. Good idea. Well, the tip is your job now. The weekly tip is going to be a summerly tip, actually. And what we would like is for all of you to go out and take any of the ideas that you've picked up from us or that have we caused an inspiration. As an example, last week, the K done, falling on its side, done type of a pattern. And, you know, just prepare to come back next year and tell us what kind of results you had. For Gretchen and me, getting to the river is a lot more difficult process than it used to be, to the point of almost being impossible in some situations. So we can live vicariously through all of you, and we'll make a trip to a few of the easier places, but climbing up over the rocks and down across the banks and all that kind of stuff is not the same as it was a couple of years ago. We'll just leave it at that. So we'll be looking forward to your reports on what happens during the summer. Okay, sharing on BT's Fly Tying Friday. And tonight we're going to start with Evelyn. Okay, it's all yours, Evelyn. There you go.
Oh, I
Jesus.
like that.
Doesn't that look good?
That one's
Wow.
cute. That's good.
Good job. The zonker, yes. I'll take a bunch of those.
Okay.
Ooh. I
Well, I
like
like
the
that
keel
one
one
too.
better. That looks really good.
Thank you.
She's got
Yeah,
that.
Evelyn, are you gonna make a book of all these?
You know what Gretchen and I have been talking about? You know, we talked about the book that we would like to do with all of you, that you all would do, and that we'll just help assemble. There's always a place in a book where you have a chapter that ends and there's part of a page left over, and we like to fill those spots up with some of Evelyn's drawings, but we don't want her to commit to anything here in front of God and the whole world, but maybe downstream we can get her published somewhere here. Last week, after talking about the crippled dun and the upside down flies on spring creeks and stuff, Lou Duncan, a friend of mine over in Sisters, Oregon, sent me a picture saying, you really need to check out this book right here. I said, oh, wow. Well, you can't see this worth a darn, so I prepared a slide for you. There it is. And this is Trout Foods and Flies for Livingston Spring Creeks, written by Satoshi Yamamoto. And there's his website, leftyanglerandflies.com. And he's a Japanese fellow living in Livingston, Montana, who fishes the spring creeks almost exclusively. And he has a book that is really worth the dollars. So check out leftyanglerandflies.com.
I think one of the things that's cool is he has a lot of pictures of the naturals, and I thought that was just really cool.
Yeah,
And
just
there's a
chock full of stuff. And in fact, one of his patterns is the same pattern that, let's see, where in the heck, right here, that a couple of guides and I came up with for fishing the same spring creek back in the early 90s. Well, the truth of the matter is, if a fly tyer thinks that they've invented anything, all you got to do is go talk to your grandfather and you'll find out you didn't. Because the truth of the matter is, there's millions of us anglers out there trying to imitate the same 30 insects. More than likely, we've come up with the same thing somewhere along the line. But anyway, neither here nor there.
Al, I fished with Satoshi last year, and that's his second version of that book, by the way.
Yep.
And as I recall, at least at that time, you could not buy that anywhere but getting it from him. And if you're interested, I'll give people his phone number. Or you can look him up.
It's on his website. The phone number is.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Yeah, and then remember, that's leftyanglerandflies.com. Well, here.
Yeah, but I think you have to buy them straight from him, and it's $30, or at least it was last year.
$30 plus shipping. Yep. It's the best $30 that I've spent. If you're interested in learning more about Spring Creek or Spring Creek type environments, because there's a lot of tailwater fisheries that are at least spring creeks in part. Hey folks, thanks for joining us. For now, it's a wrap for the season and for this particular presentation. Have a great summer. Enjoy the fishing